Senator Moran.
Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Wilkie, thank you for your presence with us today. Thank you for your service to our nation and to your service as a public official. You've been through a few confirmation hearings, and I'm delighted to have you back to have a conversation. When I judge whether the VA is working for veterans, I do so by what we call casework, which is when veterans seek help from my staff to solve problems. The number of those instances is increasing, not diminishing, and it suggests to me that we need to do more and to work harder to make certain that those who need our help receive our help. Right now, we have 80 open veteran cases with a steady stream of about 30 cases each month. You indicate that you indicate in your statement that when the veteran comes to the VA, you want him to employ a team. He or she ought not have to employ a team of lawyers to get the VA to yes. And I want to commend you on that, and I want to work with you to make certain that you have the best opportunity you can to get the VA to a position of yes on behalf of those that the department is created to serve. Before I jump into a couple of questions, I want to highlight a couple of things in construction, both at Leavenworth and at Wichita VA Med Centers. There is efforts afoot for a long time to create a partnership. In the case of Leavenworth, a public-private partnership. In the case of Wichita VA, a partnership between the Air Force Base, McConnell, and the VA. I raised those today in your confirmation hearing because I will be back with you. Those have been on a list, off and on a list for a long time. Those partnerships are something we ought to pursue, and to date, the VA has failed to do so. As in regard to my questions, I acknowledge and believe that you have a monumental task ahead of you. I think in reforming and successfully implementing the VA Mission Act, I think if it's implemented correctly, it can be transformative. It can reduce that number of those number of cases that my staff and I pursue on behalf of veterans. One of my complaints, and I raised this in the confirmation hearing of one of your predecessors, is so often when Congress passes legislation, the VA's implementation, in my view, is contrary to the intent, but in many instances contrary to the letter of the law that we've implemented. What can you tell me about your efforts in regard to implementation of the VA Mission Act? How will you make certain that the will of Congress is pursued? I've seen, in my view, pushback from the Department of Veterans Affairs in regard to community care. How can you overcome that reticence?
Well, so first of all, I support, as I told Senator Sanders, the community care and its funding, but may I take a step back and tell you how I did it at DOD? As many of you know who work military issues, personnel and readiness had not had any confirmed leadership, I think, since the Bush administration. In order for me to send a signal to the Congress and to those who work in PNR that the organization was capable of moving forward, my first directive was to implement outstanding instructions from national defense authorization bills going back to FY10. VA has a problem, as you mentioned, but the problems at DOD for PNR were catastrophic. DOD had not implemented the Exceptional Family Member Program from the FY10 bill. It had not implemented the sexual harassment policy from the FY13 bill, and it had not begun the full implementation of defense health reform from the FY17 bill. I issued the directives for DOD to carry out those programs. We now have a sexual harassment policy. Exceptional family member programs are moving out, and we are looking at October 1st for the first implementation of defense health. I don't know all of the specifics, Senator, of the outstanding directives from past authorization bills, but I give you the same pledge that I gave Senator McCain, that I will get the list and start moving out.
I look forward to working with you in that regard. I don't have much time, but I would say that, and I know that Senator Tester raised the issue of vacancies, positions unfilled. I think the Department of Veterans Affairs has a challenge not only in filling current vacancies, but also in adding employment and finding different types and more providers for the medical services. Again, I would hope that you would confirm to me that you will have an aggressive approach to filling vacant positions and adding more where needed.
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.